What if the earth went completely dark for 3 days? It might sound like something out of a movie, but some believe the Bible predicted this. The idea of 3 days without light is an ancient prophecy that has caught people's attention recently, making them wonder if it could happen in our time. This prophecy isn't just about remembering the darkness that once covered Egypt. It's seen as a divine warning that could be crucial today, especially in a world full of challenges. Some think this isn't just an old story. It could be a sign of what's coming. Are we ready for such an event? And what would it mean for our future? This content explores these questions and the possibility that 3 days of darkness could happen soon. Let's dive into one of the Bible's most remarkable stories, the 9th plague of Egypt. In the book of Exodus, chapter 10, verses 21 to 29, we learn about the 3 days of complete darkness that God sent as a plague to force Pharaoh to free the Israelites from slavery. When Moses stretched out his hand toward the sky, as God commanded, an intense darkness fell over Egypt for 3 days. During this time, no one could see anything or move, but the homes of the Israelites still had light. But why did God choose darkness as one of the plagues? In the Bible, darkness often symbolizes divine judgment and abandonment, representing how God shows his displeasure and withdraws his presence. Imagine being in total darkness. It's a confusing and scary experience. If you believe in God, take a moment to subscribe to our channel. It's free, and you'll get more content like this. Remember, in the Bible, darkness is a powerful symbol of divine judgment and God's withdrawal. Have you ever experienced being in total darkness? It's a confusing and scary feeling that can make you feel very alone. Now, imagine that feeling on a much larger scale, lasting for days. That's what happened to the Egyptians. But this wasn't just the usual nightfall. The Bible describes a darkness so thick it could be felt, almost like it was something you could touch. This strange darkness was a clear sign that something extraordinary was happening. But there's more to this story than just a supernatural event. This darkness was a direct challenge to the Egyptian sun god Ra, one of their most important gods. By covering Egypt in darkness, God was showing that Ra had no power compared to him. God controls both light and darkness. This act was a powerful display of his supremacy over all creation and other gods. It wasn't just about showing strength. It was a deep statement in a society that believed in many gods, each controlling different parts of the world. The God of Israel was declaring his absolute authority over everything. Interestingly, while Egypt was in total darkness, the Israelites had light in their homes. This clear difference showed God's special favor toward his chosen people. It's comforting to think that even in the darkest times, God can provide light for those who trust in him. But why did God act this way? It wasn't just about favoritism. This was meant to show both the Egyptians and the Israelites that the God of Israel was different from other gods. He had the power to judge, but also to protect and provide during those judgments. Despite these clear displays of divine power, Pharaoh remained stubborn. He tried to strike a deal, suggesting that the Israelites could go, but only if they left their animals behind. Why did Pharaoh keep resisting, even after seeing so many signs of God's power? His stubbornness shows a sad reality about how our hearts can harden when we ignore divine warnings. This serves as a serious reminder of how pride can blind us to the truth, even when it's right in front of us. Pharaoh's attitude is a lesson for all of us. How often do we, like Pharaoh, try to negotiate with God? We might say, "Okay, God, I'll do this, but I'll hold on to that." But God isn't interested in partial obedience. He wants our whole heart. Unlike Pharaoh's stubbornness, Moses showed strong faith and obedience. He wouldn't compromise and made sure not even one animal was left behind. Moses' firm stand is a clear example of faith in action. He fully trusted God's plan, even when it meant standing up to one of the most powerful leaders of his time. But let's be real, being as strong as Moses isn't easy. It takes courage, determination, and deep trust in God. Moses knew that partial obedience isn't true obedience. He understood that God's commands aren't negotiable. Some people see this biblical story not just as history but as a prophecy about the end times. Throughout history, saints and mystics have talked about a period of darkness that would cover the world. So, are we approaching our own 3 days of darkness? It's a scary thought, but before dismissing it, think about the similarities between our world today and ancient Egypt. In many ways, we might be living in spiritual darkness like the Egyptians. Are we putting our faith in false gods like money, power, and technology? Look around. It seems the world is getting darker in many ways, morally, spiritually, and even literally, with more natural disasters and unusual weather patterns. From political problems to environmental issues, from moral decay to spiritual indifference, many see these events as signs that we're nearing a crucial time in history. But let's take a closer look. What specific signs could show we're heading toward a time of darkness? Some people point to more frequent and severe natural disasters, others to the spreading of moral relativism in society, and still others to the persecution of believers around the world. But what would these 3 days of darkness look like? Different interpretations suggest it could be both literal and spiritual. Some think it might be a physical darkness caused by a cosmic event or an environmental disaster. Others see it as a spiritual darkness, a time of intense trials and challenges for believers. Now think about this. How would you prepare if you knew a period of deep darkness was coming? This question isn't just theoretical. It's a call for spiritual readiness, urging us to strengthen our faith and prepare our hearts for tough times. If it were a physical darkness, how would the world react? Imagine the chaos if the sun didn't shine for 3 days. But perhaps even scarier is the idea of a spiritual darkness, a time when evil seems to win and faith is severely tested. The biblical story of the 9th plague teaches us important lessons. Just like the Israelites found light in the darkness, believers today are called to be a light in a dark world. This could mean giving hope to those without it, standing up for truth in a world full of lies, or simply showing kindness in tough situations. The most troubling part is that the more we resist God, the easier it becomes to keep resisting. One of the most comforting things about this prophecy is the reminder that God is always in control, even in the darkest times. Just like He protected the Israelites during the plague of darkness, He still cares for His people in tough situations. This doesn't mean we won't face difficulties. The Israelites were still in Egypt, surrounded by darkness, but they had light in their homes. Similarly, God's control doesn't mean He will remove all challenges, but He promises to be with us through them. So, if a prophecy like this is about to happen, how can we prepare? The answer isn't to stock up on supplies, but to strengthen our spiritual foundations. Think about what steps you can take to deepen your faith and build your spiritual resilience. This could involve spending more time in prayer and Bible study, connecting better with your religious community, or actively engaging in acts of service and love. Preparation isn't just about individual spiritual growth. It's also about building strong, supportive faith communities that can stay united in tough times. It's important to remember that darkness never has the final say in God's story. In fact, it's often in the darkest moments that God's light shines the brightest. Have you ever felt God's presence strongly during a difficult time? These experiences remind us that even in the darkness, God is there. Often, it's the contrast with the darkness that makes God's light even clearer and stronger. Throughout history, some of God's greatest movements happened during times of great adversity. Consider how the early church grew despite severe persecution, or how spiritual revivals emerged during times of moral decline. Could it be that an approaching darkness might be the perfect setting for a new and powerful move of God?